This is a 2024 Mazda CX-90. Mazda's all-new three-row SUV built on a new platform from North America, and it replaces the CX-9. The CX-90 is bigger in every dimension and has three new powertrains. All of them are all-wheel drive, and all of them are hybrid. Two of those three new powertrains are turbocharged inline-six engines with two different horsepower outputs, and the third one is a four-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, but with a plug-in hybrid, so a big electric motor and a big battery pack. I said all of them are hybrid. The inline sixes are 48-volt mild hybrid systems, technically 44.4 volt systems, so that is how they are electrified. There are 5 different trim levels of the Mazda CX-90: Select, Preferred, Preferred Plus, Premium, and Premium Plus. But, and this is an important but, across the 3 different powertrains, those trim levels mean different things. So there's actually 11 different versions of 2024 CX-90 coming. The very top trim is actually what I'm driving right now. It is the 3.3 Turbo S Premium Plus. This has the more powerful of the 2 inline-six turbocharged engines and all the goodies inside. Despite the fact that these are 2024 model year cars, you can actually expect them in dealers in April. And by the way, I'm not on my usual driving route. In fact, I'm not in my usual state. I'm outside Sonoma, California, heading towards San Francisco as a guest of Mazda to try this new CX-90 out, and I'm doing it in very, very wet weather. Thankfully, it stopped raining, but it is still very, very wet outside, and there's going to be more than a few splashes. My name is Robin Warner, by the way, an experienced engineer and magazine editor, and I am really, really happy to have another inline six in the automotive market to try out. I review all kinds of cars, from a $25,000 Ford Maverick to a $425,000 Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I'll happily jump into Honda Accords, BMW M3s, and Porsche 911 GT3s. And I have fun every time. Please subscribe and join me. There is a wide range of prices for the new Mazda CX-90. The base price for the base trim is $40,970. That is a 3.3 Turbo Select. However, the least expensive plug-in hybrid you can get is $48,820. Moving up from there, the least expensive Turbo S you can get, 3.3 Turbo S you can get, is $53,125. And finally, this trim, the top trim, is $61,325. So yeah, more than a $20,000 spread across the CX-90 lineup. With all that, now is a good time to quickly pull over and show you around and inside the CX-90 in a bit more detail. However, not this CX-90, one that was under a tent and not getting rained on. Here is a look at the top trim, 3.3 Turbo S Premium Plus. This is the inline six with 340 horsepower. Just like the PHEV, this is bigger in every dimension than the CX-9, and in my opinion, prettier as well. Looking at the front of the car, you can see that it's got this nice wide grille right here, nice big loud and proud Mazda emblem right here. Got this really interesting open weave shape in the grille right here, and this nice chrome perimeter that goes down low, and then some more chrome down here as well. The headlights themselves have this really interesting daytime running light right here, and then this block kind of shape right here. This is actually smaller than a lot of headlamps you see on modern cars, but I think it's shaped really nicely. Also, because this is rear-wheel drive based in an inline engine, we've got this long sloping hood right here, but I'm much more interested to show you what's underneath it. Beneath this plastic right here is a 3.3 liter inline six engine that is longitudinally mounted fore and aft just like this. Because this is an inline six engine, it has space, more space on either side for the suspension geometry, have a double wishbone suspension, and because it's mounted fore aft, they can tuck it farther back into the engine bay, so more of the weight is in between the two axles. That makes the front end lighter, makes it have better response. This is a very good thing from a driver's point of view. And by the way, windshield washer fluid goes right there. Looking at the car in profile, you can get a better sense of the tent it's under so it doesn't get rained on. I'll go ahead and put the dimensions up on the screen so you can check that out, and let you know that I have a lot more information in the description. Also, you can notice that it has a shorter front overhang and a longer rear overhang compared to the CX-9, but it's bigger overall. So it just generally has this more rearward flowing shape, and I certainly don't mind it. Couple of details: get this nice chrome piece right here, inline 6, and then you have this nice chrome trim, part of the window trim up top. Now this particular CX-90 has these roof rails installed. That would make it a little bit louder on the interstate, but hey, if you need to store stuff, you can. And going down low, you have another chrome strip right here, and it reminds you what brand of car it is at the end. You choose between 19 and 21 inch wheels on the Mazda CX-90. This Premium Plus has the larger 21 inch wheels, but much more important to me is actually getting a sneak peek of what's behind the wheel, and that is the top suspension arm of your double wishbone front suspension. That is really nice to have. That is kind of the driver enthusiast choice for front suspensions, and it's very cool to see this on this big SUV. Speaking of, the rear suspension is also independent. It is a 5-link setup, and generally that's a pretty good way to go in back. Looking at the back, it's a pretty clean, subtle look. You do have these nice thin and long tail lights right here that kind of come to a point, a more tastefully sized Mazda emblem back there, and a reminder that it is an eSky Active G. So the PHEV says eSky Active PHEV. This being the inline 6 is G. The E is because it's the mild hybrid. It does let you know that it is an all-wheel drive CX-90, but that's redundant. All CX-90s are all-wheel drive. Generally speaking, I think the rear of the car looks tasteful, has simple, smooth, and flowing lines, and quite important to me, no fake exhaust tips. They are real dual tips. One's there, the other one's right there. All right, let's check out cargo room. Depending on how it is configured, you get between 15 and 16 cubic feet of cargo space behind the third row. You also get 12-volt port right there and an AC outlet right next to it. If you don't need to carry 6 people and you need more space, that's easy enough to do. These straps right here. And just like that, you have 40 cubic feet of cargo space and room for 4. And you might have noticed the headrests fold down automatically when you pull on that strap. And if you need more space than that and only need to carry 2, that's easy as well. And just like that, you have between 74 to 75 cubic feet of space, depending on how your specific CX-9 is configured, and room for 2. All right, let's check out the inside. This is a 3-row SUV, and I'm going to show you all 3 rows, but you'll just have to trust that that looks plenty comfortable for children back there. I don't think it's quite for adults. You can see how low the seat bottom is right there. Now, to be fair, this is set up to only sit 2 back here, so it's nice and wide, and you do have USB ports and cup holders on either side. So this has a lot of comforts built into it, but I just think it's inherently not comfortable for adults on long trips. However, the second row is a different story. Look at these nice and plush and full-size captain's chairs. Also, the seat bottoms are pretty darn high, so I have good thigh support. I have a good 2 or 3 inches of knee room, and I have less than a 90-degree bend in my knees as well. So I could easily do longer trips in the second row here. Besides, there's also some luxuries back here. You get your own climate control zone back here, and because this is a Turbo S Premium Plus, heated and ventilated seats to go with it. So you have a lot of comfort options here. Moreover, you've got these nice wood grains and polished metal as part of the seam. You've got this nice fabric here as part of the door sill, and a shade as well. You don't need it today, of course, but it's good to know you have it. And you also have your own cup holders and your own clam style opening lower center console storage space. So yeah, there's really lots of luxuries in the second row. This is the top trim Mazda CX-90 you can get full stop. So you get this nice material on the doors, you get this wood grain here, you get nice leathers, you get multi-tone, and that's just on the door. You know, pretty typical controls here. But if you go to the seat has its own controls, and you do have lumbar support. You also have this really nice leather right here, and decent but not amazing bolstering in the seats as well. But I do quite like the strip that runs along in the center to give some contrast. I think that's a nice touch. You do also have many controls to the left of the steering wheel to play with, and you also have electrically adjusting tilt and telescoping in the steering right there. The engine is already running, so you can see everything lit up, but there is the engine start button right there. This is a 12.25 instrument cluster screen right there, and next to that another 12.25 center console touchscreen right here. And because this is the top trim, you of course get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That is actually available on most trims, but not everyone. Looking down low, there are your first two of your 3 zones for climate control. We do also have heated seats, which I'm very happy to be on, heated steering wheel, and ventilated seats in the front. Beneath that is a wireless smartphone charger right there, and another 12-volt port next to that. This little panel reveals a couple of more cup holders, and here is My Drive. This is how you change your different drive modes. Beneath that, you have your Prindle. Now this operates a little bit differently from normal. It's not all straight down. You move it to the right to get out of park, and there you can move it neutral drive, drive reverse. And once you're in reverse, press this button again to get it back into park. You do have an electric park brake, and here is your main controller for the center console touchscreen up here. But you do have a separate control for media. Turn it up and down for volume, and you can actually move it back and forth to change tracks and that kind of stuff. Just like a second row, you do have a clamshell style opening center console right here, and inside of here you do have a couple more USB ports. Looking up, we do have a glasses holder right here, and here is another look at our moonroof, and it is an electrically opening privacy panel. Lovely. All right, drive modes. Buttons right here. You have 4 drive modes: towing, sport, normal, and off-road. But normal and sport is where we are going to live today, although some parts of the road seem so wet it might feel like off-road. Anyway, I'm excited to exercise this inline 6 a bit more. Let's get back to the drive. All right, let's dig into the powertrain. There are 3 powertrains, as I said. 2 of them are turbocharged 3.3-liter inline 6s. The difference between the 2 is software. It's boost. It's how hard the software makes the 2 engines work. However, there is one critical real-world difference between them. The lower output inline 6 is tuned to run on regular gasoline, and the higher output inline 6 is tuned to run on premium gasoline. That lower output on regular gasoline is 280 horsepower at 5,000 RPM and 332 pound-feet of torque that comes at 2,000 RPM. Pretty darn stout numbers. And it's not just the engine, don't forget, we do have that 44.4 volt electric motor helping out. It does so at really low RPMs, providing up to 17 horsepower, not much, but 113 pound-feet of torque. The higher of the 2 outputs is 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. But do remember, that needs premium fuel to get there. It will drop down a little bit if you run that engine on regular gasoline. It'll run fine, but not make 340 horsepower. And by the way, that is the highest output production engine Mazda has ever built, and I really love the fact that they decided to build it in an inline 6 engine. That is a fantastic, naturally balanced, smooth engine configuration to use, and it also fits under this nice long hood really nicely. By the way, that 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque is achieved at the same 5,000 RPM for the horsepower and 2,000 RPM for the torque. The third and final engine is a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine that makes 189 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 192 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. However, it's attached to an electric motor that on its own makes 173 horsepower and 199 pound-feet of torque. And when combined, it makes as much as 323 horsepower and the same 369 pound-feet of torque. So really close to the top line engine with a bit of help from electricity. That also gets help from a 17.8 kilowatt hour battery pack, which does allow it to drive 26 miles on electricity alone. No matter which powertrain you get, you use the same 8-speed automatic transmission. This is an in-house Mazda 8-speed automatic transmission that does not have a torque converter. Instead, it uses a wet clutch pack. And I think it's because the fact that we've got help from electric motors, which can operate really smoothly from 0 RPM, they can get away with not having a full torque converter, but something simpler like a wet clutch pack. And in my experience driving it so far, it's operating just fine, just as smoothly as any other automatic. And as I already mentioned, all CX-90s are all-wheel drive, and in fact, all Mazda SUVs are all-wheel drive. And I have to say, so far, this has proved to be a fantastic powertrain. This inline-six, 340 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque, and very smooth delivery of that. Whenever you need to get going, we're already going, highway speeds. But with the kickdown, we get healthy pull and a real nice, buttery smooth sound from that inline-six. I love it. Now, I do have to say that this does not sound quite as good as the German inline-sixes that I've driven recently, especially the inline-six I experienced in the Mercedes E450. That was just extremely smooth and creamy the way it delivered power. But this Mazda is not far off, and it's a lot less expensive to get in this. So while it's not as good as a more expensive, more premium car, Mercedes-Benz, it is close. And despite the fact that this is bigger than the Mazda CX-9 in every dimension, the fact that it is now a mild hybrid actually means you get better fuel economy than before. Depending on the exact trim and configuration you get between 23 and 24 miles to the gallon in the city, 28 miles to the gallon on the highway, 25 combined. Pretty darn respectable. Now, the plug-in hybrid obviously does a lot better than that, and I'll go ahead and put those numbers on the screen right there for you to check out. Of course, while fuel economy is extremely important, it's not nearly as much fun as accelerating, especially when you've got a new inline-six to play with, especially when that inline-six is turbocharged, especially when it's the most powerful engine that Mazda has ever made. Yes, I got to test it. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test. I do have the CX-90 in sport mode, coming to a complete stop. Stomp on the gas. Good initial launch. Yes! Great growl from that inline-six. Fast shifts from the transmission and good acceleration. Wow, look at this go. Now that is healthy acceleration from this 340 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque inline-six. Fantastic. For a 3-row SUV that approaches 5,000 pounds, that was strong acceleration. Pretty darn good, right? Now, I did actually get to separately drive the Mazda CX-90 plug-in hybrid, and the acceleration in that was not as good as this inline-six, but it actually wasn't that far off. Of course, this being a Mazda, even though it is a 3-row SUV Mazda, they put a lot of work into making this car feel good to drive, to handle well. And there are a couple of specific things that were done on the CX-90. One is called kinematic posture control, where they actually brake the inside rear brake while you're going into a corner a little bit to help mitigate body roll and help the rear axle behave just a little bit better as you're going through a corner. Really interesting stuff. So even though the roads are wet, of course I had to test that. Let me show you that now. All right, everybody, I did find a quick patch with a few corners in it. I do have the CX-90 in sport mode. Let's see how it handles. Now, it did stop raining continuously at least, but it is still pretty wet on the road, so we're probably going to be a little bit careful, but still want to see how it feels. Yeah. And right away, for a 3-row SUV, we've got great turn-in response. Good growl from that inline 6 too.
In a quarter mile, your destination will be on the left.
Yeah, good turn-in response. Not at all heavy. Good feel. Good transitions from right to left. I've got a good sense of how much grip I have, even though I don't have a ton with the wet road. Wow, yeah, this is a great handling SUV. For something this size, this is really enjoyable. Mazda's always punch above their weight when it comes to handling feel, but they really outdid themselves with this SUV. They put a lot of effort into the inherent character of this car, to have the layout it does, to have the weight distribution it does, to have all the work they did to put into it, and it really is paying off. This is a great handling 3-row SUV. Really, really good. Pretty good, right? I mean, ideal circumstances, of course, it would be a dry road and we'd really get closer to the limits. But still, considering everything, I really am impressed. But of course, most of the time, especially in something like this, you're gonna have work to do, you're gonna have people to carry around, you're gonna wanna know how comfortable this SUV is, what the ride is like, things like that. And I'm happy to report that despite all the effort that was put into handling, that even on this bumpy road we're on right now, we've got a pretty darn decent ride. This does not have adaptive shock absorbers or anything like that, but the tuning that Mazda did was a really good compromise between handling and ride, and so really, both are above average. And yeah, some people might find it a little bit stiffer than others, but to me, it's still plenty compliant and a compromise I would very happily take. And that's true on roads like this or on the interstate. Yes, of course I got to test it there as well. Let me show you that. All right, the sun is coming out and it is time for a quick stint on the interstate. I'm actually already on the interstate, getting up to speed right now. And this version of the CX-90 has its full suite of driving aids, so we're definitely going to check that out and just see how this car feels in general on the road. Okay, cruise control is set to go with traffic right around 75 miles an hour. At that speed, we're cruising under 2,000 RPM, about 1,900 RPM for this inline 6-cylinder engine, and it is humming along nice and smoothly, nice and quietly in the background. Road noise is nice and quiet in this car, and wind noise is pretty darn good as well. We do get some noise of just like traffic and things like that coming through the windshield, but generally it is really quite good. Definitely above your average mainstream car when it comes to that. This is pretty close to the Honda Pilot I drove a couple months back, which was also brand new and had really stellar road and wind noise isolation on the interstate. I was really surprised by that. This is just as good as that, if not a little better. Also, because we have this full-seater driving aids, I'm going to go ahead and take my hands off the wheel. We do have lane keep and steering assist and all this kind of stuff. And we've got this really cool graphic on the instrument cluster that I want to show you in just a second as well. But first, checking to see how well it follows the lane. And it does a really good job, although it is now complaining to put my hands back on the wheel. But this graphic is very cool, so let me show you that. So right on the fully digital instrument cluster, you have us, that's a car right there, but then it also shows the car in front, and it also shows cars that are going on either side of the lane. So you get a sense of what's directly ahead of you and what's on either side of you. It's a super cool graphic, shows you very clearly what's going on. I think that's a really nice touch. So yeah, generally speaking, I think this is a fantastic highway cruiser. On top of that, it gets decent highway fuel economy as well, 28 miles to the gallon, and you've got really nice equipment to use. Obviously, you have the 12.25-inch center console touchscreen to use. You also have heated seats, ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, wireless charging, wireless connectivity, nice leathers and upholsteries in general. The seat is comfortable. So yeah, this is a great, great highway cruiser. Another facet of a 3-row family SUV would be towing. Yes, And yes, this Mazda can tow. If properly equipped, the inline 6 Mazda CX-90 can tow up to 5,000 pounds, which is completely competitive in the class. Now, if it's not properly equipped, that number goes down to 3,500 pounds, still certainly more than nothing, but a noticeable deficit. And if you do get the plug-in hybrid version of the CX-90, it's 3,500 pounds no matter what. So, what do we think about this brand new 2024 Mazda CX-90? This is a fantastic car for the driver enthusiast oriented family man. You get really good feel from this car. It just feels good to drive. You get the rear wheel drive oriented layout. You get a double wishbone front suspension, a 5-link rear suspension, and unless you go with the PHEV, you get an inline 6 turbo engine to play with. All really good things. And Mazda executed all this stuff really well. Plus, it does tick all the boxes you need to tick for a family SUV. Good towing capability, plenty of space. You can get it to seat 8 or 7 or 6, and if you get it to seat 6, it seats those 6 quite comfortably. The interesting thing about this Mazda is where it's placed in terms of price. It is a few $1,000s more than a lot of other mainstream products out there. But if you're at all interested in driving, it is money very well spent. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please show me by giving it a thumbs up. Doing so helps me out quite a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, if something like the CX-90 appeals to you, you should definitely also check out the Acura MDX. That one is priced a bit higher than this one. That's at the premium level. But if you go up in trims with the CX-90, there's a lot of overlap in price. And there's a lot of overlap in content as well. So that's really worth checking out. And from there, I've reviewed a whole bunch of stuff. Something's gonna pop up on the screen next to me. Hopefully it's something you're interested in. And if you do watch it, I definitely hope you like it. Okay, goodbye for now. Golden Gate Bridge, just, because.